At the flower, viewing banquet, an assassination occurred. Song Jiang, to protect his widowed sister-in-law, pushed me in front of her to block the blade. The sharp blade nearly struck a vital point. I almost lost my life. When I confronted him afterward, he coldly explained, "Sister-in-law is 6 months pregnant. The child in her womb is my elder brother's last bloodline. As the future daughter-in-law of the Song family, shouldn't you protect the eldest grandson?" Later, Song Jiang was credited for his success in flood control and petitioned the emperor to marry his elder brother's widow as an equal wife, citing that he couldn't bear to see his young nephew lose his father figure. The emperor praised his righteousness and readily approved. Song Jiang joyfully received the decree, only to see the words primary wife prominently written on it. The emperor chuckled. Minister Song's act is the height of benevolence. How could he be criticized by the world for violating propriety by taking an equal wife? That Miss Wen has already been sent by me to my unreliable imperial brother. From now on, you may openly and honorably love your sister-in-law without concern. I fell into a coma from severe injuries and only woke up after several months. During that time, Song Jiang never showed his face even once. Yu Shan said that the heir's wife of the Xuanyang Marquis Manor was frightened at the flower viewing banquet, and it affected her pregnancy. Song Jiang was worried about the unborn child in his sister-in-law's womb. He had been taking leave all these days to stay home and keep her company. Me mouth tasted bitter, yet I wasn't surprised. Song Jiang has always prioritized Shen Zhuoyin above all else. She is his elder brother's widow, and also his childhood sweetheart who grew up with him. Back when the Xuanyang heir was still alive, the relationship between uncle-in-law and sister-in-law was already extremely harmonious. Later, the heir apparent died of illness, leaving behind Shen Zhuoyin and an unborn child. While Song Jiang shouldered the family's burdens, he also cherished Shen Zhuoyin even more. Therefore, whenever I had the slightest disagreement with Shen Zhuoyin, Song Jiang always took her side. So much so that at the banquet that day when the assassin attacked with a knife, his first instinct was to push me, who was closest to Shen Zhuoyin, toward the danger. Thinking of this, the wound on my chest began to throb with a dull pain. Yushan saw my weary expression and thought I was heartbroken. She went to the vanity to fetch the cosmetic box and comforted me. "Miss, please don't be sad. Though the second young master didn't come in person, he has you in his heart. This entire set of jade jewelry, he sent it all to make you happy." I glanced over briefly. Inside were 12 exquisite pieces of jewelry neatly arranged. How familiar they looked. A year ago, I paid a deposit for a set of jewelry at the pearl and jade shop. The next morning, it was returned by the shop intact. Just because Shen Zhuoyin had also taken a fancy to this set of jewelry, Song Jiang competed to buy it at 3 times the price. At that time, I still had expectations of him. So I asked the shopkeeper reluctantly whether he had told Song Jiang that this set of jewelry had already been reserved by Miss Wen Dong of the Wen Manor. The shopkeeper looked at me with difficulty and said, "This humble one did tell him, but as soon as the second young master heard that the jewelry set was reserved by you, he immediately offered a high price." I can't remember what I was feeling at the time. I only remember having a huge fight with Song Jiang afterwards. He calmly endured my interrogation, looking coolly at my agitation and anger. Finally, he said, "Wendong making such a fuss over a few pieces of jewelry. Don't you think you look pathetic? Now this set of ornaments has returned to my hands, but it is a reward for taking that blade for Shen Zhuoyin. How ridiculous." I no longer spared the jewelry a glance and said in a low voice, "Throw them away. From now on, there is no need to accept anything he sends." My engagement to Song Jiang originated from an accident. 3 years ago, I was invited by Princess Minghua to attend a polo match, where I faced off against Song Jiang, whom I had never met before. At that time, I had only recently arrived in the capital and was still unfamiliar with social etiquette. Me teammates were all holding back and letting others win. But I gave my all and competed with everything I had. Song Jiang had no intention of being serious, but seeing how desperately I fought, he actually developed a competitive spirit. Although our side suffered a crushing defeat in the end, I won the favor of the Grand Princess. She said that Song Jiang and I reminded her of herself and the prince consort when they were young. So she asked on the spot about the Marquis of Xuanyang's intention to form a marriage alliance with my family. At that time, father was still a vice director in the Ministry of Revenue, and being able to marry into a marquis's household was truly an unexpected blessing from heaven. The Marquis of Xuanyang, however, reacted indifferently. As the second son, Song Jiang was neither the heir nor burdened with the responsibility of inheriting the title. The Marquis of Xuanyang was non-committal, only asking for Song Jiang's own wishes. Truth be told, though I could be considered somewhat attractive, but in the capital where peonies bloom in dazzling splendor everywhere, it would be quite difficult to catch the eye of a noble Liat Song. Jiang only thought briefly before expressing his gratitude to the Grand Princess. After that, we frequently exchanged visits and got along well for a period of time. I originally thought Song Jiang had some affection for me too. After all, as long as it didn't involve Shen Zhuoyin, he was no different from any ordinary fiancé. But I really didn't expect that his usual favoritism in trivial disputes was one thing. Yet now, it has come to the point where I nearly lost my life. I threw away all the letters and gifts Song Jiang and I had exchanged over the past 3 years. Then I dragged my barely recovered body to find father. Unexpectedly, he had been dispatched to Lizhou last month and wouldn't return to the capital until the end of next month. Me stepmother, Lady Luo, upon learning of this, summoned me to her room. These past days, with all the commotion of things being thrown out of Tinju courtyard, Anyong with eyes could tell that the Wen family's eldest daughter had quarrelled with second young Master Song again. Lady Luo used to look down on me and had little contact with me in daily life. Only after I latched onto the high branch that was Song Jiang did she deigned to look at me properly. At this moment, thinking I was quarrelling with Song Jiang, she opened her mouth to urge reconciliation. Little did she expect to hear me utter the 2 words break the engagement. Child, have you lost your mind? What kind of prestigious family is the Marquis of Xuanyang's household? Countless people rack their brains trying to climb that ladder, and you want to break the engagement. Lady Luo stared at me in disbelief, as if I had committed an unforgivable crime. Song Jiang pushed me to block the blade and nearly got me killed. Do you still expect me to marry over and send myself to my death again? Upon hearing this, Lady Luo's expression froze. That day, Prince Chong'an had held a banquet at his residence to admire flowers. Lady Luo had been unable to attend due to her youngest son's grave illness, so she only knew there was an assassination attempt but was unaware of the details. However, after a moment of astonishment, she dismissed it. How could it be that serious? I am sure he just acted rashly in his panic. Besides, you are fine, aren't you? She urged me. After this incident, young Master Song surely feels guilty toward you. He'll make it up to you slowly in the future. Such a fine husband, don't be foolish. Since Madam says he is so fine, would you dare go before the Buddha to pray that Anjen will also marry such a fine man in the future? At these words, Lady Luo's face changed instantly. I continued, if Madam truly goes to ask the Buddha to grant Anjen a husband with character like Song Jiang's, then I, Wendong, will obediently await marriage and never mention breaking the engagement again. When Anjen was only 6 years old, and Lady Luo regarded her as the pearl in her palm, treasuring her dearly, she so eagerly hoped for me to marry into the Marquis's household, precisely to leverage that connection later to elevate her daughter's status, so she'd have a chance to find a high-ranking noble son-in-law. You child, if you won't marry, then don't marry. Why drag your sister into this? Lady Luo changed the subject guiltily. The matter of breaking the engagement is not for me to decide. After all, this marriage was arranged by the Grand Princess herself. If you want to break it off, go plead with her to take back her decree. Ignoring her sarcastic tone, this is indeed the most direct method at hand. But how could I, a mere daughter of a fifth, rank official, have the qualifications to meet such imperial relatives and powerful nobles? Not to mention the Grand Princess has been ill for a long time, secluded deep in the palace. Even Princess Minghua can hardly see her. For now, I can only wait for father to return and submit a memorial to plead the case. That evening I wrote a letter and sent it to Li Zhou. In the letter I described in detail the circumstances of my injury at the flower, viewing banquet, and made clear my determination to break off the engagement. In the following days, I both recovered from my injury and waited for father's reply. Seeing that I was determined to break off the engagement, Lady Luo returned to her usual contempt. Using the excuse that I should eat light food after my injury, she ordered the kitchen to prepare only plain congee and simple dishes for every meal. Helplessly, I had to use my own private money to have separate meals prepared for Tingzu courtyard. One day Yushan came back from the tavern in a hurry. She said mysteriously, "Miss, something big happened at the Marquis of Xuanyang's residence. Could it be that Song Jiang suffered some great disaster, with injuries so severe there is no medicine to save him?" "Of course not. How could you think like that?" "That is really a pity then," Yushan muttered for a while before explaining to me. "Yesterday second master Song and the heir apparent's wife went to a gathering together. Midway they got separated, and the heir apparent's wife accidentally got tripped by the crowd. She already had an unstable pregnancy, and after this incident her condition worsened. Today all the famous doctors and midwives in the capital have been summoned to the Marquise's residence on standby." Yushan's tone gradually carried resentment. The second young master was so anxious about this matter, he nearly went mad, and, in his panic, rashly petitioned His Majesty to send all the imperial physicians from the Imperial Medical Bureau to the manor. Back when Miss was hanging by a thread, he wasn't even this worried. He didn't even visit. No wonder Miss wants to break off the engagement. I no longer care about such things now. I just find it slightly strange. At the flower, viewing gathering, Shen Zhuoyin was 4 months pregnant. Now over 3 months have passed. Precisely when she needs to rest quietly. What business does she have going to that crowded assembly? Fortunately, Shen Zhuoyin's child was barely saved in the end. At this time, half a month has passed since I sent the letter. Wyatt, there is still no word from father. I was about to write another letter to send, but Lady Luo suddenly sent someone to summon me. The old nanny hurried in, and as soon as she entered the courtyard, she ordered the servants, "Quickly dress Miss up. Apply more powder and rouge to cover the sickly air. Young Master Song is waiting in the front hall right now." Ever since deciding to break off the engagement, my heart has grown increasingly calm. All those past grievances, looking at them now, seem trivial. I thought I could face Song Jiang with indifference. But the moment I saw him, I couldn't help grabbing the teacup at hand and hurling it at him. The porcelain cup shattered on the ground, and fresh blood instantly gushed from Song Jiang's forehead. "Dongyang, have you gone mad?" Lady Luo at the side cried out in alarm and rose to her feet, her face deathly pale, calling repeatedly for someone to fetch a doctor. Song Jiang stood there gracefully and did not dodge. At this moment, he merely waved his hand to indicate it was nothing, and unhurriedly took out a handkerchief to wipe away the blood on his forehead. "Wen Dong, you actually dared to strike and injure your fiancé. When did the Wen family ever teach you such behavior?" "Dongyang is merely following the example set for her." I raised my eyes to look directly at Song Jiang and mocked. "So this turns out to be something that is not allowed." Seeing me speak sarcastically, Lady Luo was both shocked and disgusted. Today, when Song Jiang came to visit, she had wanted to take the opportunity to smooth things over, and had specifically instructed the Momo to dress me up for the occasion. She never expected that I would strike him as soon as I arrived. Song Jiang gently made excuses for me. Donger has been worrying excessively during her illness, and I delayed visiting her for so long. It is understandable that she harbors resentment. Oh my second young master, what a magnanimous heart you have. It is all because I, as her stepmother, failed to teach her properly. I hope you will, please. Donger and I haven't seen each other for many days. I wonder if Madam would allow us to speak privately. Before leaving, she glared at me fiercely. Only Song Jiang and I remained in the main hall, feeling there was nothing to say. I turned to leave. Still haven't calmed down. Song Jiang's expression carried an inexplicable hint of grievance. "Do you know that from childhood until now, no one has ever dared to harm me in the slightest?" The implication being that him standing there and letting me throw things at him was already a great act of grace. From childhood until now, no one has ever threatened my life either. I suppressed my rage. If you want to protect Shen Zhuoyin, you should block the blade yourself. What gives you the right to push me out? Don't say you lost control in panic, how dangerous the situation was. Everyone saw it with their own eyes. You never intended to let me live. Song Jiang frowned, his tone turning cold. Don't make it sound so ugly. Yin is 6 months pregnant, and the child in her belly is my eldest brother's only bloodline. You should know how important this child is to the Song family. Besides, as the future daughter-in-law of the Song family, isn't protecting the eldest grandson your duty? Looking at Song Jiang's matter-of-fact expression, I was momentarily at a loss for words. Seeing my silence, Song Jiang let out a soft sigh, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a hint of gentleness. This matter was my oversight. If you still hold resentment in the future, feel free to vent it, but today I am not here to quarrel with you. He continued, there are floods in Changzhou, and His Majesty has ordered me to go handle it. Yin's pregnancy is still unstable. This trip won't be short, so I hope you can frequently visit the Marquise's manor and look after her for me. Song Jiang, you truly are shameless to the extreme. Before he finished speaking, I had already raised my hand and slapped him across the face. Always like this. Why is it always like this? Every time I want to calmly handle a dispute with him, I am ultimately pushed to the edge of losing control. Song Jiang was terrifyingly calm, as he looked down at me indifferently. Wendong, you like your unyielding nature, but I hope you understand that you are to become the heir's consort in the future. If you continue to be so willful, it won't end well for you. What ending could be worse than now? I roared out of control. Song Jiang, he will never marry you, and I don't need your damn affection. The air froze. Song Jiang's emotionless gaze turned to ice inch by inch. I see. So you still haven't given up? A cold arc curved at the corner of his mouth as he pulled out an envelope from his sleeve. This letter addressed to Li Zhou was intercepted at the postal station by your stepmother and handed over to me. Song Jiang's eyes showed a hint of pity, as if looking at prey struggling in vain. Foolish little Dong, you actually thought convincing Lord Wen would allow you to break off the engagement. Have you forgotten that our marriage was decreed by the Grand Princess herself? I retorted, according to our dynasty's laws, if one party commits a grave crime before marriage, the other party has the right to dissolve the betrothal. Even if an imperially bestowed marriage might be different, the current emperor is benevolent. If I could state the reasons clearly and appeal to his emotions, it might not be impossible. Grave crime? What crime have I committed? You deliberately pushed me to block the blade. That is premeditated murder. Song Jiang stared at me, a trace of amusement actually floating in his eyes. You may not know this, but that day the assassin's blade was aimed at a yin because the Prince of Chong'an happened to be behind her. The scene was chaotic at the time. Apart from Ayin and me, no one knew why you were injured during these days while you've been recovering. Prince Chong'an has been suspicious about why the one injured was you, who was so far from him, so I said that you threw yourself in front of the blade to protect the prince. After speaking, he reached out to stroke my hair bun. Since no one witnessed it, and it even earned you a reputation for risking your life to save your master. Donga, tell me, what crime have I committed? I felt as if I'd fallen into an icy abyss, as though once again experiencing the despair of that day when I was pushed toward the blade with no way to evade it. However, Wendong, even if I hadn't twisted cause and effect, you still wouldn't be able to break off this marriage. Song Jiang pressed closer step by step. The one bestowing the marriage is an imperial relative, and the alliance is with a relative of the state by marriage. What stands before you is neither morality nor law. He leaned down and whispered in my ear, but royal authority. I gasped, my fingertips digging deep into my palm. Song Jiang tilted his neck slightly, admiring the color draining from my face. After a moment, he changed the subject. I heard you lost the jade accessories I gave you. I had craftsmen remake them specifically. They're definitely not old items. I suppose you refuse to calm down because you don't want to have the same things as others. His gaze fell on my knuckles, which had turned white from exertion. With extreme patience, he pried them open one by one. Then he pressed a smooth, hard object into my palm. This is a jade pendant I carved with my own hands. There is only one in the world, and I am giving it only to you. Song Jiang's handsome eyes curved up with a charity, like gentleness. Now have you calmed down? He caressed my cheek with his fingertips, his tone flat yet unquestionable. Donger, this is the first time I've hurt you, and it will be the last. Stay in the manor peacefully and wait for marriage. When I return from controlling the floods, once elder brother's mourning period is over, I'll immediately bring you through the door. I stood frozen before him, speechless, letting him do as he pleased. After a long while, I finally let out a self-mocking laugh. Song Jiang, you actually just treat me like a toy, don't you? That is why he clearly values Shen Zhuoyin more. Yet tells me he likes me. That is why he doesn't care about my life or death. Song Jiang paused briefly and thought seriously. Yes, so what? Lady Luo, using my unhealed injuries and need for rest as an excuse, ordered me not to leave Tingzu courtyard until father returns to the capital. She asserted that even if a letter reached father's hands, he would be the same as her and absolutely not allow me to break off the engagement. The reason is simple. We cannot afford to offend the Marquis of Xuanyang's manor. Song Jiang would soon depart for Changzhou. Before leaving, he specially sent someone to relay a message telling me I must keep the jade pendant safe, otherwise he didn't know what he might do. Due to this near-threatening warning, that jade pendant has been lying obediently on my desk to this day, seeing me with a deeply furrowed brow all day. Yushan felt bitter inside. She forced a smile to console me. Miss, please try to look on the bright side. At least in the future you'll be the wife of the Marquis Manor's heir. And the second young master even personally carved a jade pendant to appease you, which shows he already knows he was wrong. I let out a bitter laugh, me gaze falling on the less than smooth white jade. Atonement is fake. Intimidation is real. It is nothing more than a slap followed by a sweet treat. Warning me not to be ungrateful. Wasn't it always like this in the past? Whether I was consumed with jealousy because he favored Shen Zhuoyin, or furiously argued with him because he deliberately seized what I loved, if I didn't bow my head, he would grow cold and distant. Then once time had passed, he'd come bearing gifts with honeyed words, and I was quite susceptible to it back then. So over time, though Song Jiang and I constantly clashed, it gave me the false impression that I was still somewhat willful. I actually forgot that he and I were never equals. He never once said sorry to me. It was only because he still found this plaything amusing that he indulged my willfulness, that he was willing to toy with me when the mood struck. Song Jiang said my struggles were futile because what stood before me was supreme royal authority. But if royal authority is so mighty and imposing, why does Song Jiang treat me like dirt, treat my life as worthless? This contradiction stuck in my throat like a fishbone, leaving me unable to understand, unable to swallow my food. When Lady Luo heard this, thinking I intended to resist through a hunger strike, she actually brought people and barged into listening bamboo garden with great aggression, forcing me down without explanation and force, feeding me. When Dong, it was you who insisted on showing off to get this marriage above your station, so why are you putting on this pitiful act now for whom to see? Lady Luo sneered coldly. The second young master has already lowered himself to make peace with you, so you should know your place and not act coy after getting such an enormous advantage. Rage surged in my heart, and I retorted mercilessly with sarcasm. Since Madam envies it so much, why don't you personally take the field and marry in my place? After all, you still have your charms, and a fine man like Song Jiang would surely treat you well too. Lady Luo's face instantly turned alternately green and white with fury. She shouted sternly at the old maidservant beside her. The eldest miss speaks wickedly and defies her mistress. Slap her mouth for me. Make her wake up properly. The old maidservant received the order, rolled up her sleeves, and charged forward. Yushan cried out in alarm and threw herself in front of me, only to be shoved violently to the ground. Lady Luo, I stared at her. my voice ice cold. Since you hope for me to marry into the Marquis manor, you should know that I am to become the heir's wife. Are you certain you want to offend me here today? The wind from the slap grazed my cheek, and accompanied by Lady Luo's sharp stop, that withered hand froze in midair. She stared at me with a heavy gaze, squeezing out a few goods through her clenched teeth. Since your appetite is poor, there is no need to waste food sending it to Tingzu courtyard during this time. Madame Luo gave me one last vicious glare, her face livid as she left with a flick of her sleeve. Yushan scrambled to my side in panic, tears streaming down her face. Miss, don't be afraid. The master will be back soon. Once he knows how the madam has mistreated you, he definitely won't let her off easy. I wearily propped myself up, physically and mentally exhausted. Though father has always been stubborn and strict, he has ultimately treated me well. If he knew that my injury that day was deliberately caused by Song Jiang, he would surely fly into a rage, but just as Madame Luo said, the Xuanyang Marquis manor wields overwhelming power and influence, something the Wen family absolutely cannot afford to provoke. If after his initial fury, father weighs the pros and cons and ultimately chooses to side with Madame Luo, then what Prince Chong'an has personally visited the manor. Just as I was feeling gloomy and dejected, I suddenly heard Madame Luo's almost shrill shriek from the courtyard. Immediately after came the servant's urgent and clear announcement. In response to Madame Yai's, indeed. His Highness personally stated that he came to express his gratitude in person, to show his appreciation for the eldest Miss's selfless protection of him that day at Prince Chong'an's manor. Speaking of Prince Chong'an, Xiao Hongmi's impression of him can be summed up in 8 characters: drunken decadence, indulgent in pleasure. I've heard that when the late emperor was alive, his most beloved prince was him. He even once had the intention to support him in succeeding to the throne. Unfortunately, this prince didn't attend to proper duties and only knew to indulge in pleasures. The late emperor had no choice but to establish Prince Hui as the heir instead. Prince Hui relied heavily on this elder brother. The new dynasty was just established, and the court situation was unstable. The two brothers weathered through together, depending on each other. Now that the emperor's dragon throne was secure, Prince Chong'an withdrew with his achievements accomplished and continued his days of indulging in sensual pleasures. Perhaps having been suppressed too long while assisting his younger brother, these years he lived dissolute and squandered extravagantly. Impeachments from court officials came like snowflakes, but His Majesty, mindful of their brotherly bond, was exceptionally tolerant and protective. Now everyone under heaven knows that Prince Chong'an is eccentric, domineering and does as he pleases. At the Flower. Viewing banquet, I had glimpsed him from afar. His appearance was bewitchingly beautiful, his prestige naturally majestic, making one not dare to look directly at him. Before I went to pay my respects, Lady Luo warned me sternly with harsh words. He is imperial nobility of the highest rank. How could he truly condescend to visit a young lady like you? He must be taking this chance to curry favor with your father. When you meet him later, don't run your mouth. I perfunctorily agreed, but my mind was making other calculations. If what is blocking my annulment is royal authority, then I'll just use royal authority to break through this situation. Since Prince Chong'an has acknowledged my merit of saving him, why not make this act real and ask him for an imperial decree to annul the engagement? I'll just act pitiful after going out. I took a deep breath, feigning extreme weakness, and shuffled out from behind the screen with unsteady steps. Your subject Wen Dong pays respects. Oh my goodness. Heaven have mercy. How did this child become so haggard? Before I could finish my courtesy, Xiao Hong had already cried out in exaggerated alarm. His theatrical tone left everyone present momentarily stunned. He looked me up and down with blazing eyes, speaking with anguished distress. Look at this little face, as pale as rice paper. Look at these wrists, as thin as kindling. And look at these lips, Tex K, not a trace of color. He made a show of supporting my arm as I greeted them, then turned to Lady Luo, his tone suddenly dropping. Lady Wen, have you truly called for a proper physician to examine her? Lady Luo was still reeling from shock and hadn't recovered. Being called upon, she answered in a fluster. We have called one, but her internal organs were injured. It cannot heal overnight. She only needs to rest and recuperate. What? Recuperate? She is in this state, and you are just letting her recuperate. Xiao Hong bellowed furiously. A bunch of mediocre, incompetent wastes. How dare you neglect this king's lifesaver so? He suddenly turned toward me, bending slightly, his gaze piercing directly into the depths of my eyes. Miss Wen, this prince happens to have a renowned physician from the Jianggu staying at my estate. Until you recover, why not relocate to this prince's residence and recuperate properly for some time? After speaking, he added extremely quickly in a voice only I could hear. This is Lord Wen's intention. My heart suddenly skipped a beat. Before I could respond, Lady Luo had already anxiously interjected. Your Highness, this absolutely must not happen. Dong Yang is an unmarried maiden. If she were to rashly move into the prince's residence, it would invite gossip. Moreover, her health isn't as frail as it appears. Given time, she will surely recover. Dong Yang, isn't that right? While tossing the conversation to me, she shot me a sharp warning glare. Honestly, I was completely baffled. Instinctively, I cast a pleading look at the person before me, but Xiao Hong merely looked at me calmly. His gaze seeming to say, the choice is yours. This person couldn't be completely trusted, but mentioning father, there must be a reason. On the other hand, if I continued being confined in the Wen residence, it would be no different from sitting and waiting for death. Me thoughts racing. I curtsied slightly, my voice thin and feeble. Your Highness honours me. This subject's daughter is deeply uneasy, but Madam speaks truly. This matter may implicate your Highness's reputation, and moreover, this subject's daughter's condition only looks frightening, even without seeking medical treatment. Before I could finish, I was already covering my lips with a handkerchief, coughing violently. It seemed as if all her internal organs were about to be coughed out of her chest. Lady Luo was stunned, speechless. The person who had just been sharp-tongued and confrontational with her at Tingzhou Garden, how had she suddenly turned into someone who looked terminally ill in the blink of an eye? She pursed her lips to explain further, but Xiao Hong didn't give her a chance to speak. He let out a heavy sigh of heartfelt distress, his remorse evident in his expression. Alas, had I not been entangled in mundane affairs these past days, with Miss Wen having shown such great kindness, even searching the world for famous physicians would not be excessive. Now that my benefactor has been delayed to this extent, if this prince truly follows what the lady said and stands by idly. He suddenly looked up, his gaze sharply sweeping toward Lady Luo. Not to mention this prince's reputation, even the entire imperial family would have their spines poked at by people across the realm. Lady Luo was completely dumbfounded. She hadn't said anything at all, had she? How did she suddenly get labelled with disgracing the imperial family? Lady Luo's face turned pale, and she spoke with difficulty. Allow this concubine to write to Li Zhou to seek master's instructions first before. Cough, 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 Lady Luo. Xiao Hong supported his forehead with his hand, his shoulders trembling slightly. After a few breaths, he regained composure and resolutely ordered, Miss Wendong's illness is fierce and urgent. There is no time to delay. Without further ado, depart for the residence immediately. Having said that, he allowed Lady Luo not another half-word. Xiao Hongshu draped his arm over my shoulder and strode briskly outside with me. After leaving the main hall at some distance, he chuckled approvingly. Miss, your acting isn't bad at all, I humbly replied in a soft voice. Not even a tenth as good as your Highness. Song Jiang travelled day and night for 7 days before finally arriving at Quanzhou. The local prefect had been anxious day after day, having long awaited Song Jiang's arrival. The dam in Yanshui County breached a month ago, flooding a vast expanse of houses and fertile farmland downstream. Although the authorities tried their utmost to block it with earth and sand, the results were still minimal. As a result, public resentment in the county boiled over, with people banding together to besiege the yamen. By rights, when disaster first strikes, it should be reported to the court immediately. The root of the problem, however, lay in the fact that this dam had just been repaired at great expense in March of last year. Off the funds allocated by the court, a portion had been misappropriated by Prefect Lai to curry favour with the powerful with reduced funds. Materials had to be substituted with inferior ones, originally hoping it would at least hold for 2 or 3 years. Who could have expected it to collapse thunderously in barely a year? Had only Yanshui County been affected by the disaster, Prefect Li could still barely cover it up. But just a few days ago, torrential rains during flood season caused the temporary blockage to collapse again under the unbearable burden. The floodwaters rushed out like beasts from an open gate, engulfing several counties downstream, with hundreds perishing in an instant. At this point, Prefect Li could conceal it no longer and had no choice but to report it in a panic with vague wording. Song Jiang's arrival was nothing short of a savior descending from heaven for him. After all, the powerful figure he had embezzled funds to curry favor with back then was none other than the Marquis of Xuanyang's household. Prefect Li recounted the full story of the disaster to Song Jiang in detail, feeling increasingly uneasy as he spoke. In contrast, Song Jiang appeared exceptionally calm, but what he was calculating in his mind at this moment was not a sound strategy for flood control, rather. If this campaign succeeded, he would be able to use this merit to make that request to His Majesty, a request that would both let him get what he wanted and push Wendong into the abyss. At this thought, an imperceptible glint of darkness flashed through Song Jiang's eyes. When he first met Wendong years ago, he found this woman unruly and defiant. Those eyes of hers were filled with a fearlessness and tenacity untested by the world, which stirred up a hidden desire for conquest deep in his heart. He wanted to see her submit, wanted to see her frightened, wanted to see her tough exterior crumble bit by bit. Therefore, even though this marriage engagement was grossly mismatched in social status, he readily agreed to it. All these years he deliberately favoured Shen Zhuoyan, not only because he genuinely valued her, but more so to grind down Wendong's sharp edges. As long as she was willing to bow her head and yield, he would treat her the same way he treated Shen Zhuoyan. But she was completely oblivious, never bowing her head before him. 3 years now, a woman who knew neither gratitude nor showed any improvement. Thou amusing, he had grown tired of it. So that day at the Flower, viewing banquet, when he pushed her to block the blade, aside from wanting to protect Shen Zhuoyan, he also harboured unspeakable selfish motives deep down. At the very least, let him see her flustered appearance. Right. Unfortunately, in that moment her face showed more shock than the loss of control he'd been hoping for. But fortunately for her, she was lucky enough to survive. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had the chance to see her at the Wen residence, her entire body stiff with embarrassment after being ruthlessly crushed by reality and class distinctions. Learn to be obedient quickly, Wendong. He really wanted to tell her in person, though her performance that day pleased him. It still hadn't reached perfection. Not enough loss of control, not enough panic. Was it because her love wasn't deep enough? At this thought, an indescribable irritation swept through Song Jiang's heart. Prefect Li had been waiting quietly at his side all along. Suddenly seeing Song Jiang frown, he assumed the flood control plan had hit an obstacle. After a long while, he finally couldn't hold back. He probed with his words. I wonder how much funding the court has allocated this time. Song Jiang came back to his senses and reported a number. What? This isn't even half of what was spent on repairing the dam back then. Prefect Li, as if struck by lightning, cried out in dismay. Though this official concealed 30% of the casualties, there was not a shred of falsehood about how terrible the disaster was. How could His Majesty? Before he finished speaking, he suddenly met Song Jiang's cold, stern gaze. The rest of his words caught in his throat. After a moment of dead silence, he spoke awkwardly. All the sandbags for blocking the water in the city have been used up. Now the water is fierce, and the sandy soil is loose and easily breached. If we purchase more, we can only buy clay that costs several times more to be effective. But this amount of relief silver is like a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. It simply can't stop it at all. Who says it can't be stopped? Song Jiang looked at him coldly. Aren't there other methods? It was the height of summer. Yet Prefect Lai felt a chill rising from the soles of his feet straight to the crown of his head. His lips moved, wanting to say something, but felt that whatever he said would be wrong. The atmosphere froze for a moment, then Song Jiang suddenly laughed lightly. Prefect, there is no need to panic. This official was merely jesting. His expression returned to normal, his tone serious. If the relief silver is insufficient, we should naturally find ways to raise funds. This place is not far from Lizhou. Temporarily borrowing emergency funds and grain from the Lizhou prefect shouldn't be difficult, right? Prefect Li looked troubled. This official has considered this method before, but just last month the court sent a vice-director from the Ministry of Revenue to Lizhou to audit the accounts. Acting against the wind at this time, I fear it may be improper. No harm. Song Jiang waved his hand, his tone confident. That vice-director from the Ministry of Revenue is this official's future father-in-law, though he is somewhat rigid and stubborn. Even if he doesn't give face to the monk, for the sake of the countless disaster victims in Changzhou, he surely won't interfere. Your Excellency can rest assured and just go borrow. In the end, Song Jiang didn't forget to add, remember, be quick. For instance, why did he intervene to help? And why did he say it was father's intention? However, after getting off the carriage, Xiaohong settled me in a secluded courtyard, then disappeared without a trace. The servants said the prince had most likely gone off somewhere to seek pleasure and entertainment again. Given his usual reputation, such claims were hardly surprising. The days at the prince's residence were calm and uneventful. My health gradually improved with the physician's treatment. At first, I thought the famous Dr. Xiaohong mentioned was just an excuse to placate the Luo family. Who would have thought he actually did invite a master physician to treat me in the end? Did he truly believe Song Jiang's story about sacrificing oneself to protect the Lord that night? The moonlight was like water. I paced in the courtyard, me thoughts in turmoil. Our passing maid suddenly stopped at the gate, smiling as she beckoned to me. Miss Wen, the prince has returned and is currently in the study. If you need to see him, go quickly, be careful, or once dawn breaks, he'll disappear again. After thanking her repeatedly, I hurried toward the study. That courtyard was brightly lit, and Xiaohong's tall and slender silhouette was clearly reflected on the window lattice. I suddenly felt somewhat timid. After hesitating for a moment, I finally announced myself to the guard and stepped into the room. I walked softly with light steps. And before I could announce myself, my gaze had already fallen upon Xiaohong, who was resting with his chin propped up behind the curio shelf. There was no one serving inside the room, and outside was also completely silent. Not long ago, Xiaohong had just experienced an assassination attempt, so the place where he was should have been heavily guarded. Yet the guards let me in so easily, and he himself was even more unguarded. No matter how I looked at it, it all felt somewhat strange. For a moment, I didn't know whether to stay or leave. After hesitating briefly, I finally mustered up the courage to step forward and called out softly, "Your Highness." But all that responded to me was his steady, long breathing. No, a bit closer to him, I could only see the candlelight dancing on his incomparably handsome face. Between Xiaohong's brows was an unmistakable weariness, which actually added a touch of divinity to that face that was usually seductively beautiful. I was actually puzzled. Did this person really go out to indulge in pleasure? Xiaohong was sleeping deeply. Even someone with no tact would know it wasn't appropriate to disturb him further. Helpless, I was about to quietly leave and wait for another opportunity next time. Suddenly, a mosquito came buzzing over and landed recklessly on his high, straight nose bridge. When I was young, I was once bitten on the eyelid by this venomous mosquito, and the next morning when I woke up, it was painfully itchy and swollen to the point that I suspected it was actually a wasp in disguise. Xiaohong has such a noble status. If tomorrow he goes out with a swollen red nose bridge, I dare not imagine the scene, so I raised my palm, trying to shoo it away, suddenly jolted awake. If this slap actually landed on Xiaohong's face, the consequences would be unthinkable. If you don't swat it, this king will personally chase it away myself. Just as I was anxiously at a loss, a lazy, smiling voice suddenly rang out. Xiaohong had opened his eyes at some point. his long phoenix eyes looking at me with a hint of helplessness. I hastily curtsied. This subject was reckless and disturbed your highness's sleep. Please forgive me. Get up watching this wretched creature suck this king's blood with your own eyes. Is there any greater offence than that? As Xiao Hong spoke, he slapped at his nose bridge with a smack. Then he took out a handkerchief to wipe his hands, a hint of satisfaction between his brows. He raised his eyes, his gaze lingering on my face for a moment, then sighed. This Li Daoming truly lives up to his reputation. In just a month's time, your complexion has changed drastically, and you look as if you filled out a bit. Dr. Li's medical skills are divine, seeing through this subject's ailment at a glance. Moreover, thanks to your highness's grace, I was able to recuperate here in peace. Now my health has fully recovered. For such great kindness, this subject truly has no way to repay. Xiao Hong raised his hand to stop my pleasantries. Spare me the formalities. These past days you've been looking for me everywhere. What is it about? Suddenly, a trace of realization flashed through his eyes. He added, let's be clear. This king knows that you didn't block that blade for me that day. Don't expect me to owe you a favor. I had already guessed as much in my heart, so I wasn't surprised upon hearing this. I took the opportunity to ask him, if that is the case, why did your highness use this as a reason to help me out of that predicament, and even say it was my father's intention? Could it really be that my father entrusted you, but he is far away in Lizhou? How could he know about my situation? Xiao Hong picked up the jade pot from the table, poured 2 cups of clear tea, pushed 1 cup in front of me, and said unhurriedly, although the flower viewing banquet that day was complete chaos. This king's eyesight is still decent. I happened to witness young Master Song Ia push you in front of that blade with his own hands. When Lord Wen was dispatched to Lizhou by imperial order, this king was also present at the time. To do your esteemed father a favor, he kindly informed him of this matter. My heart tightened. Father, what did he say? Has say? Xiao Hong seemed to recall some amusing scene, the corners of his lips lifting slightly. He cursed. He vividly described the situation that day. That usually refined man spent a full 2.5 hours cursing Song Zhang, interspersed with many obscure and incomprehensible dialect phrases, as well as rather inelegant street vulgarities. Recalling Lord Wen's impassioned appearance at the time, the corners of Xiao Hong's mouth became increasingly difficult to suppress. Though I found it unexpected, I seemed able to imagine what my father looked like. However, compared to his towering rage towards Song Zhang, what Lord Wen worried about more was you. Xiao Hong restrained his smile, his tone extremely serious. He said his eldest daughter appears straightforward and reserved on the surface, but in reality has a fierce temperament, extremely strong-willed, and often acts unexpectedly. He feared that after you woke up, you would recklessly go find Song Zhang to fight to the death, or in a moment of anger, do something irreversible. Upon hearing this, a bitter sourness suddenly surged up my throat. My fingertips unconsciously tightened. I suppose father also doesn't want to offend the Marquise's manner. He is afraid you'd have a moment of despair and do something foolish. Xiao Hong sternly interrupted, his expression unusually grave. In fact, just as he predicted, after Song Zhang came to see you, didn't you nearly lose all appetite as well? I froze, hastily saying, absolutely not. This subject's daughter simply had a poor appetite. It was Madame Luo who truly never felt disheartened even once. Xiao Hong's all-seeing gaze and indisputable tone made all my defenses catch in my throat. Momentarily at a loss for words, I could only guiltily lower my eyes. Seeing me like this, Xiao Hong's expression softened slightly. When he spoke again, his tone was much gentler. This king understands your unwillingness to marry Song Zhang again. Minister Wen sees this even more clearly than fire, however. The difficulty with this matter lies in the fact that this is a marriage bestowed by the imperial family. Therefore, Minister Wen is willing to set aside his dignity and serve this king whom he once impeached, all to have this king protect you and help you escape this predicament. Xiao Hong took a light sip of the warm tea in his cup, seeming somewhat sentimental. That kind of stubborn old fogey is now willing to lower his head to this king. He must care about you very much. I pressed my lips together, forcibly suppressing the stinging sensation at the tip of my nose, afraid that the moment I opened my mouth, tears would burst forth. Xiao Hong also remained quietly silent, patiently waiting until I had calmed my emotions before saying, "Your marriage agreement with the Xuanyang Marquis Manor. Even if this king wanted to plead your case before His Majesty, in the end, it still requires Aunt Changle's consent. Unfortunately, this king's relationship with her isn't harmonious, and with her delicate health and bad temper, what I can do is find a way for you to meet her once. As for whether you can persuade her to relent, that'll be entirely up to you." Having said this, he curved his lips into a mischievous smile. "Don't disappoint this king's expectations." As night deepened, Wendong exchanged a few words of small talk with him before bowing and taking his leave. Xiao Hong stood by the window until that slender figure completely disappeared around the corner of the corridor. Then finally turned around and retrieved a confidential letter from a wooden box. The letter was sent from Lizhou, detailing evidence of local officials falsely reporting disasters for years and amassing wealth on a large scale. Xiao Hong's knuckles tightened. All these years he had outwardly withdrawn from court, indulging in pleasure day and night, but in reality he had been secretly investigating the accumulated abuses within the court. Admittedly, the plot of an extravagant and debauched prince actually being the emperor's secret agent was somewhat cliché-fied, but Xiao Hong did indeed use this identity to root out quite a few corrupt officials. The assassin at the flower. Viewing banquet was from Lizhou. He had lurked in the prince's manor for years solely to assassinate this greatest embezzler under heaven and seek justice for the relatives he lost in that disaster. Xiao Hong followed the trail and finally discovered not long ago that the Lizhou prefect was not only corrupt by nature, but also deeply colluded with high officials in the capital. He pretended to visit Lizhou for leisure, extracting intelligence between cups and toasts. But he learned that the disaster in Lizhou back then was actually man-made. The mastermind was none other than Song Ju, the crown prince of Xuanyang, who had died of illness nearly a year ago. Back then, he colluded with the prefect to transport plague, infected items into Lizhou, triggering an epidemic. Afterward, not only did he fail to report it, sealing the infected citizens in the city without treatment, he also falsified the disaster victim registry, fraudulently obtaining massive relief silver from the court to line his own pockets. Unfortunately, this person acted without leaving a single trace, leaving no paper evidence whatsoever. Those involved also either fled far away or mysteriously disappeared after his death. If one were to say, the Marquis of Xuanyang had no hand in this, Xiao Hong absolutely wouldn't believe it. His eyes darkened as he carefully put away the secret letter. Just then, a series of hurried footsteps came from outside the corridor. His personal guard, Zhou Yang, barged through the door carelessly, still unable to resist looking back as he entered. How strange. When Miss Wen came in earlier, she looked all gloomy and miserable, but how come she left with such a relaxed expression? What kind of miraculous medicine did you use? Your Highness, to make the young lady so happy. Seeing his lack of propriety, Xiao Hong deliberately put on a stern face. Zhou Yang, you have some nerve. How dare you let someone in while this prince was taking a nap? If something had gone wrong, His Majesty would hold you accountable first. Oh, come on, it was Miss Wen who came. What could she possibly do to you? Zhou Yang shrugged nonchalantly. Besides, she searched for you eagerly for so many days, and finally caught you returning to the manor. How could this subordinate have the heart to stop her? Moreover, during the days you were away from the manor, weren't you always asking about Miss Wen's situation? Hearing Zhou Yang's rapid-fire words, combined with that meaningful expression, Xiao Hong felt the veins on his temples throbbing. After reaching a cooperation with physician Wen, Xiao Hong still needed to stay in Lizhou for some time. To know of Wendong's safety. He had Zhou Yang secretly keep watch outside the Wen residence and regularly send written reports. Xiao Hong's original intention was only to ensure Wendong's well-being and that she wouldn't take any risky moves. Who would have thought this kid was such a chatterbox, actually writing every single action and smile of Wendong into his letters in minute detail? Today Miss Wen woke up, her brows slightly furrowed upon waking. Must be the wound hurting. Miss Wen had a quarrel with second young Master Song and actually threw away all her old keepsakes. Miss Wen argued with her stepmother, angrily talked back, and was cruelly deprived of meals as punishment. At first, Xiao Hong had no interest in such trivial matters and forced himself to read through them. But, as time went on, he actually found these everyday affairs rather intriguing. So much so that he would often unconsciously wonder, did that girl eat properly today? Has she managed to cheer up a bit? After returning to the capital, he strongly recommended Song Jiang to the emperor as the candidate for flood control. If truly thinking of the people of Changzhou, a clean official from the Ministry of Works, like Councillor Wen, would be the best choice. If the emperor chose personally, he would certainly select an upright minister too. However, the disaster situation in Changzhou was already like a bursting dam. In Xiao Hong's eyes, what could be salvaged was truly limited. The lives of common people were nothing more than mayflies and ants in the eyes of the powerful. Xiao Hong never agreed with treating human lives as worthless, but on the path to punishing the wicked, some costs were inevitable. The emperor governed with benevolence, yet could hardly reverse this declining momentum. Xiao Hong was convinced that making these difficult decisions for his younger brother was the very meaning of his existence. So he recommended Song Jiang, determined to use this flood disaster to catch the Xuanyang Marquis manor with solid evidence. Therefore, he instructed Councillor Wen that if Changzhou came to borrow grain or money, he must not get involved. He only needed to lure them into leaving loan documents, and he could then find an opportunity to thoroughly investigate the Xuanyang Marquis manor. The key to success or failure lay in Councillor Wen's skill at coaxing people. Before departing, Xiao Hong mischievously teased that old stick, "In the mud." If this matter fails, when Song Jiang returns victorious and marries your daughter, the Wen and Song families will become one. If the truth comes out later, the Wen family will be doomed beyond redemption. Lord Wen must take this matter most seriously. These words made the old man feel chills all over. After a long while, he said, "Your Highness promised this old minister to help my daughter break off the engagement. But that also depends on whether Miss Wendong works hard enough." Xiao Hong smiled cunningly. "If you father and daughter both fail, this prince really won't be able to help you." A few days later, Xiao Hong kept his word. When entering the palace for an audience with the emperor, he brought Wendong into the palace with him. Arriving outside Changle Palace, he repeatedly instructed, "Aunt has an arrogant nature, and now that she is unwell, her temper is even more fiery. No matter what she says later, remember to be cautious with your words and actions, and absolutely must not." He paused. "Throw things at her." Wendong was slightly stunned, and for once showed a hint of reproach. "Your Highness can rest assured, this subject girl still wants to live a long life." Xiao Hong couldn't help but smile, watching her follow the guiding eunuch into the deep palace, then turned to head toward Chang'an Hall himself. He reported to the emperor in detail about his recent findings, and also chatted about brotherly matters. Without realizing it, 2 hours had already passed. Xiao Hong left Chang'an Hall, about to head to Changle Palace to inquire about the situation. Walking near Xuanqing Gate, he saw a familiar figure standing alone. Wendong must have just left Changle Palace, her expression still grave. Xiao Hong watched from afar for a moment, seeing her completely motionless. The ominous feeling in his heart suddenly intensified. He almost unconsciously quickened his pace, rushing to her side with an urgency even he hadn't noticed. How did it go? In the moment before Wendong answered, several scenes flashed through Xiao Hong's mind of Princess Changle flying into a rage at her, or mocking her with cutting words. However, Wendong's eyelashes trembled slightly as she slowly raised her eyes. Her eyes brimmed with confusion and a kind of almost absurdly eerie bewilderment. The princess said, "She forgot. Before my audience with the Grand Princess, I had imagined all sorts of possibilities, nothing more than 2 outcomes, approval or denial, but I never anticipated she would choose a third option. I forgot." The cool voice descended from the high hall. Just 3 light casual words. Princess Changle reclined against the carved chair, showing neither a trace of doubt nor any intent to probe further. I understood instantly. She hadn't truly forgotten. This was the arrogance unique to those in power. That betrothal which determined half my life's fate was, to her, merely an offhand remark made on a whim. She couldn't be bothered to change it, much less deign to take responsibility. She said she forgot, yet the world remembered, and those caught in the situation remembered even more. The night was cool as water as I stood by the manor's pond, lost in a daze. Light footsteps sounded from behind, and Xiaohong's voice fell from behind. Such is the hierarchy. Those in high positions can act willfully and capriciously, yet those in low positions can never do anything about them. In that tone, there was actually a trace of undisguised melancholy and self-mockery. He chuckled and asked, disappointed with this world. I slowly shook my head. Thou unexpected. I had considered such a predicament before. I lowered my head to gaze at the pond water and sighed from the bottom of my heart. This subject merely feels that power is truly captivating. The Grand Princess is like this, and so is Song Jiang. With their own will alone, they can toy with me in the palm of their hands. I am angry, resentful, and unwilling because of this. Yet, I can't help but yearn for it. At this point, what else can I say besides sighing that having power is truly wonderful? The evening breeze brushed by, and all around could be heard only the rustling of leaves. Xiaohong remained silent for a long while. I raised my head to look, and actually met his astonished, gazing eyes. Your Highness. With one soft call, he seemed to awaken from a dream. A trace of unease passed through his expression. After a moment of silence, he smiled and said, "Wen dong 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 compromise. I have great expectations of you." The next day, I visited Princess Minghua's residence. After exchanging pleasantries, I laid out everything Song Jiang had done. I never imagined this person's intentions could be so sinister. Minghua's delicate brows knitted tightly. "What do you need me to do, Dongyang? I wouldn't dare trouble the princess with such a major matter. It is just that recalling the polo match 3 years ago. The reason the eldest princess granted the marriage was because Song Jiang and I reminded her of herself and the prince consort back then. So I was thinking, if I could explain to the princess how Song Jiang differs from the prince consort, might it shake her resolve? Minghua was raised under the eldest princess's care in her youth, so she should know something about the prince consort who passed away early. Unexpectedly, upon hearing this, Minghua smiled in an eerie way. "Dongyang, you are mistaken. It is not that Song Jiang resembles the prince consort, but rather you resemble the prince consort." I froze. She explained in detail. Back then, the two of them became connected through polo on the field. The prince consort was just like you, refusing to yield an inch, giving it his all. After Auntie lost the match, she turned around and petitioned the imperial grandfather to grant the marriage. But you know, in our dynasty, a prince consort is not permitted to hold office. With his heart full of ambitions, he ultimately became trapped in the princess's residence, his aspirations turning to nothing. Minghua sighed. Auntie admired his unyielding spirit, yet perversely wanted to see him bow his head. The prince consort was a clever man. Not long after the marriage, the two of them became devoted to each other. The room suddenly fell silent. Seeing I remained silent, Minghua said softly, "Dongyang, sometimes, yielding is also a way of not yielding." At the moment of parting, Minghua whispered, "If Miss Dong can truly escape this predicament, it would be a stroke of great fortune. I heard the other day that the Xuanyang Marquis Manor called for the imperial physician again for a diagnosis, and the child in the heir's wife's womb is 90% likely to be male. If that is the case, even if you marry into the Marquis Manor, you won't be able to become the heir's wife. According to the laws and customs of our dynasty, when the heir to a title passes away, it should be inherited by his legitimate son. If there is no legitimate son, then it passes to his brothers. Previously, Shen Zhuoyin had been rumored to be carrying a female child. Now it seems Song Jiang's dream of becoming the heir is likely to be shattered. Afterward, I earnestly requested Xiao Hong to arrange another meeting with the eldest princess for me. However, the palace gates were tightly shut, and I could only kneel outside the hall begging for an audience. Perhaps 2 hours, perhaps longer. That heavy palace gate finally opened. Upon seeing the figure in the hall, I prostrated myself and kowtowed. 3 years ago, this subject was bestowed by your highness's golden words, a marriage to the second young master of Xuanyang Marquis Manor, Song Jiang. However, this man has wicked intentions. He actually used this subject as a shield, deliberately trying to take my life, and showed no remorse afterward. I humbly beseech your highness's mercy to allow this subject to withdraw from this marriage engagement. Princess Changle's complexion was listless, greatly displeased that I had disturbed her peace. Girl from the Wen family, I thought you at least had some sense. Don't you understand that this marriage is a favor bestowed upon you all? Your highness, please see clearly. If this grace is bestowed upon both this subject's daughter and Song Jiang, then his treating the life of his betrothed as worthless would that not be scorning your highness's authority. Such a person who shows such contempt for royal power. This subject's daughter's request is only reasonable. Hamph, sharp-tongued. Princess Changle coughed a few times while covering her mouth with a handkerchief, then continued. Even if I allow you to break off the engagement, what of it? The Xuanyang Marquis Manor is at the height of its power. As the daughter of a minor official, do you still expect to have a way out after offending them? Better to use gentle words while he still has some affection for you, in the future. You might not lack comfortable days. I bit my lip. Your Highness, back then, did you also advise the Prince Consort this way? As soon as the words fell, the air in the hall suddenly froze. That deathly silence was like a blade hanging overhead, suffocating, to be honest. I was terrified. Me knees trembled incessantly, and my back was soaked through with cold sweat. But I had no way to retreat. I took a deep breath and spoke again, perhaps in the princess's eyes. The lowly are meant to grovel on the ground. So when encountering that stubborn person who refuses to bow their head, you treasure them like a rare find, taking them into your grasp. What you seek is not their true heart, but rather you want to personally break their proud bones with your own hands, making them submissive. Then to your highness, this is not marriage, but a game with another person's entire life as the wager. Outrageous. Princess Changle's expression changed dramatically in fury. Yet, strangely, she did not call for anyone to drag me out. Song Jiang wants to take my life because he views me as a plaything. Your Highness broke the Prince Consort's will. What exactly did you view him as? I boldly raised my head and looked directly into Princess Changle's angry eyes. The Prince Consort died young, cast away in melancholy, and never left a single word for you before his death. All these years, Your Highness, have you truly never felt regret? Inside the great hall, Owen could hear a pin drop. After who knows how long, a short, scornful laugh came from above. Wendong, you truly have audacity reaching the heavens, daring to pierce my heart like this. She spoke through gritted teeth, yet suddenly let out a soft sigh. This stubbornness does bear some resemblance to Yuan. Princess Changle exhaled deeply and began to recount the past as if she had long been waiting for a listener. Back then, when I lost to Yuan at polo, he was quite unconvinced. I went to beg Father Emperor to appoint him as Prince Consort. Not because I loved him much, but simply because I wanted to see him have no choice but to bow his head to me. But even after forcing him into marriage, whenever we had disputes, if it wasn't his fault, he absolutely refused to admit it. Sounds ridiculous. But back then I used every means possible, yet he still wouldn't yield. He had no choice but to threaten him with his family's safety before he finally lowered his head to me. Princess Changle gazed into the distance, her eyes filled with melancholy. You ask if I have regrets. Of course I do. I regret it beyond measure. Her voice suddenly turned sharp as if laced with pain. In my youth, I was arrogant and ignorant, thinking that as long as he admitted defeat, it meant I had won. After that, I took whatever I wanted, and he complied with everything. I thought he finally loved me as I loved him. Until on his deathbed, all he asked was that I not harm his family. Only then did I realize how he had been walking on thin ice all these years by my side. And in the end, how utterly despairing he must have been. Princess Changle staggered down the jade steps, her back to me as she said, 3 years ago when I saw you and Song Jiang. He was in a trance as if seeing the past. I thought perhaps you two could find your way out of the ending that Yuan and I failed to reach. Alas, in the end, all roads lead to the same destinations. She gave the palace maid a look, and someone helped me up. Those eyes that once brimmed with authority now held tears. When she looked at me, there was nostalgia, there was melancholy, and also a trace of mockery. Song Jiang may be me, but you are not Yuan. I will petition the emperor to annul your betrothal to the Xuanyang Marquis Manor. As for the consequences, you'll just have to fend for yourself. Her words were resolute as she turned to leave. Your Highness, I called out to her. Semaine once told this subject that sometimes yielding to the current situation is to protect the beliefs in one's heart that will never yield. My voice trembled slightly, yet was exceptionally clear. This subject believes that back then, the prince consort probably didn't live entirely in despair. Perhaps he was always waiting for your highness to truly understand his heart. Manhwa had said that when the prince consort looked at the princess, the love in his eyes couldn't be faked. Beneath his submissive attitude, what he might have hidden was a deep expectation. Expecting that one day the princess would awaken and stand side by side with him, rather than looking down from above. Princess Changle's footsteps abruptly halted. Her back stiffened for a moment, but she didn't turn around, then slowly disappeared behind the palace buildings. Several days later, I received an imperial edict at Prince Chong'an's manor. The marriage arrangement between the Song and Wen families is void effective immediately. Henceforth their marriages are unrelated, with no further connection. I know many people might think Wendong's scene at Changle Palace was too risky, but look carefully, Wendong did her homework before going in, so when she entered the hall, she didn't use pleading, but exposing. She exposed the scar the princess had hidden for half her life. You think breaking someone's pride means you've won. All you've won is a walking corpse, and a final words of "don't hurt my family." The brilliance of this passage is, it is not just talking about the princess and the prince consort, Tit is also talking about Wendong herself and Song Jiang. Wendong held up this mirror before the princess, making her see with her own eyes. If Song Jiang is left unchecked, he'll become another Mem. If Wendong isn't saved, she'll become another Yuan. After more than 2 months of managing the flood disaster, Song Jiang finally returned to the capital before Shen Zhuoyin went into labor. Though there were some twists and turns in this remedial effort, it was ultimately more bark than bite. He had originally thought he'd have to spend considerable effort arguing with that father-in-law from the Ministry of Revenue, but unexpectedly the other party simply had him sign a loan document and readily let him go. Song Jiang's original intention was not to sign it. After all, some things leave traces that will eventually become hidden troubles one day. But he had to return to the capital as soon as possible to exchange his flood control achievements for the emperor's favor. Moreover, the Lizhou prefect had been colleagues with his late elder brother, and Wen Tao had a marriage engagement with his family. A mere piece of paper shouldn't matter. On the day of departure, the common people of Changzhou knelt by the roadside, kowtowing in gratitude. Just as he was about to board the carriage, a clod of dirt flew through the air and hit squarely on his official robe. Bad guy, corrupt official. A child's angry curse exploded from the crowd. Song Jiang looked in the direction of the voice and saw only a thin woman frantically covering the child's mouth in fear. A very faint, cold snort escaped from his nostrils, but his face remained calm as he composed himself and bowed in farewell to the seeing-off officials. On the day he arrived in the capital, Song Jiang returned home travel, worn and weary. Before he could rest even for a moment, he changed into his court attire and headed straight for the palace. Inside the Cheng'an Hall, the young emperor carefully reviewed his work report memorial, while listening to him report on the disaster situation. Song Qing's talents are exceptional. In merely 2 months, you quelled the floods in Changzhou and restored the people's livelihood. Your achievements are invaluable." The emperor asked with a smile, "Speak. What reward does Song Qing desire?" Song Jiang's heart surged with emotion, but he feigned hesitation on his face. After declining several times, he finally said, "Since my elder brother's passing, my sister-in-law has washed her face with tears daily, melancholy and despondent. Know that the mourning period for my brother is nearly over. My sister-in-law is still in her prime, yet has no intention to remarry. She only worries about the child in her womb, who will have no father to accompany them in the future." He paused, quietly raising his eyes to gauge the emperor's intent. "Therefore, this subject boldly wishes to follow the example of ancient sages, to take my sister-in-law as wife and adopt my nephew under my name, to preserve human relationships." The hall suddenly fell silent. Song Jiang's heart tightened, and he hastily added, "Naturally, my sister-in-law would hold the position of equal wife, absolutely not to break the marriage agreement with the Wen family." Equal wife? It was clearly just a murmur, yet somehow Song Jiang detected a hint of mockery in it, but before he could ponder further, the emperor had already put on a smile. "Song Qing is benevolent and righteous. How could I not approve?" With that, he took up his brush, dipped it in ink, and immediately drafted an imperial edict. A eunuch bowed and presented the bright yellow scroll before Song Jiang. He forcibly suppressed his joy and kowtowed in gratitude without reading it carefully first. However, when the imperial edict was unfolded and his eyes fell upon the words approving Shen Juoyin as his principal wife, Song Jiang's blood suddenly froze throughout his body. The emperor, seeing his confusion, explained with a smile, "Minister Song's action is the epitome of benevolence. How could you be subject to public criticism merely for marrying an equal wife in violation of propriety? Moreover, that Miss Wen has long since requested to break off the engagement herself. I have already sent her to that unruly imperial brother of mine. She will never come to pester you again. Since Minister Song has always cherished Miss Shen, with my decree, just openly and honorably be affectionate with your wife." Song Jiang didn't know how he had stepped out of the palace gates or how he had returned to the marquise's manor. He rushed directly to the Wen residence in a daze, only to have the door slammed in his face. The gatekeeper trembled. The eldest miss was invited to the prince's manor to recuperate 2 months ago. The prince, mindful of her life-saving grace, specifically instructed her to stay for an extended period. Song Jiang was thunderstruck. He never imagined he had shot himself in the foot. Wendong must have successfully broken off the engagement by leveraging Prince Chong'an's influence. Thinking of the emperor's words sent, a bitter fire ignited in Song Jiang's heart. What did sent mean? Did he make Wendong a secondary consort, or did he bestow her upon the prince's manor as a concubine? She was clearly his possession, his plaything. By what right did she just slip so lightly into another's hands? Towering flames of jealousy and unwillingness scorched his rationality. Song Jiang, disregarding his dignity, banged forcefully on the Wen family's main gate. He declared that he would not give up unless he saw Wen Tao. The gatekeeper was nearly in tears. "The master has not yet returned to the capital, and the mistress has also gone back to her hometown. Second young master, even if you smash the door through, you won't be able to see them." Song Jiang froze. Wen Tao's audit should have ended long ago. So why hasn't he returned until now? He turned and rushed back to the marquise's mansion, barging straight into the courtyard where Shen Juoyin resided. The maid looked at Song Jiang with a wary expression, but not knowing why he was so furious today. Before she could enter the room to announce him, he shoved her aside and burst into the bedroom. Shen Juoyin was leaning against the bedside, embroidering small clothes for the child in her womb. Suddenly hearing the door slam with a bang, she was so startled that her hand trembled, and the silver needle pierced right through her fingertip. She looked up to see who it was, and her face instantly turned pale. She instinctively wanted to flee, but her cumbersome body couldn't move. "Guide ye about the child. Yin, don't be afraid. I am not here to condemn you." Looking at Shen Juoyin's deathly pale face, Song Jiang forcefully suppressed the surging hostility within him, squeezing out a trace of twisted gentleness. Guiji was wrong. Back then it was that physician who deceived me. That is why I thought it was a girl. I really didn't mean to deceive you. Shen Juoyan's tears fell like rain as she trembled and shrank backward. After Songju passed away, she discovered she was pregnant with his posthumous child. This should have been great news for the Marquise's household. But when she realized that Song Zhang, her husband's younger brother, her childhood companion with whom she'd always gotten along well, seemed to regard this unborn child as a thorn in his side, she never slept soundly again. To keep Song Zhang at bay. She paid a fortune to bribe a charlatan fortune teller, insisting the child in her womb was a girl. When Song Zhang heard this, though he neither confirmed nor denied it, his expression clearly showed relief. Shen Juoyan had planned to keep up the deception until the child was born. Who knew that after being startled at the flower, viewing banquet, the imperial physician, eager to curry favor with the Marquis of Xuanyang, would insist it was a boy and that all was well. At moment Song Zhang fell silent, but requested leave to rest at home. He stayed by her side constantly as she recuperated. Her near miscarriage at the gathering was also Song Zhang's doing. No, Song Zhang closed in step by step, his tone so gentle it chilled the heart. It is all right now, Ayan. I've already petitioned the emperor for an edict to marry you as an equal wife. From now on, this child will be my own flesh and blood. Shen Zuoyan's face instantly turned ashen. Unfortunately, there was a slight complication. Donga broke off her engagement, so you are now my principal wife. Don't cry, be happy. I've wanted to marry you since we were young, but Big Brother got there first. Now after all these twists and turns, you are still my wife. Song Zhang paused, his voice turning cold. But why won't you obey me? He suddenly rushed over and grabbed her wrist, refusing to let go. I clearly instructed you to summon Wen Dong to the manor every day and keep a close watch on her. The maid screamed and fled out, scrambling and tumbling. Shen Juoyan desperately tried to pry open those tightening fingers, struggling to get the words out. Miss Wen is recovering at the prince's manor. How can I summon her? Let go. It wasn't until Shen Juoyan cried out in pain that Song Zhang finally released her. Upon hearing the news, the Marquis of Xuanyang rushed over, and seeing this scene, furiously cursed. You scoundrel, how dare you treat your elder sister, in-law, who is 6 months pregnant like this? Are you even human? Song Zhang turned a deaf ear and flung the imperial edict over. From today onwards, Ayan is my wife. He turned around, resolutely stepped out of the room, and never looked back. I stayed quietly at the prince's manor for nearly 3 months. Father finally returned to the capital travel, worn at the end of the month. That night, dressed in dark, casual attire, he secretly infiltrated Prince Chong'an's manor. Behind him followed a haggard, looking middle-aged man. Father introduced him as the vice magistrate of Lizhou. He had personally overheard the prefect conspiring with Song Ju, and was now willing to serve as a witness to expose the crimes of the Marquis of Xuanyang's household. Only then did I suddenly realize the weight of that favor Xiao Hong had mentioned. Xiao Hong praised him without reserve. Very capable indeed, Lord Wen. With this, combined with the ironclad evidence you and I have gathered, we can even skip the search and directly throw them into the Court of Judicial Review for strict interrogation. Father's brows were tightly knitted, his anger hard to calm. Such parasites. Their conduct is utterly despicable. Don't they know that the people are the foundation of the state, and when the foundation is solid, the state is at peace? Xiao Hong smiled bitterly. His eyes also filled with grief. At this moment, any words of comfort seemed pale and powerless. That night, the Xuanyang Marquis Manor was surrounded by official soldiers. The once glorious gates were reduced to a prisoner's cage in an instant. The Xuanyang Marquis and his accomplices were loaded onto prison carts one by one. But searching among them, there was no sign of that second young master who had once had the heir's position within easy reach. A few days later, I heard that the Xuanyang Marquis had received quite a bit of special attention in prison. The jailer was from Lizhou, and upon learning that the disaster from years ago came from his eldest son's hand, he showed no mercy in his treatment. The soldiers further seized from the deep vaults of the manor Countless secret letters and account books of collusion with local officials, along with mountains of ill-gotten wealth. Shen Juoyin, terrified by the house raid, lost her unborn child that very night. The Shen family used this as grounds to petition for leniency on her behalf. In the end, they spared her from being sold off and brought her back to her natal family to recover her broken body. As for Song Jiang, this person vanished like vapor, with no trace to be found. But he surely couldn't get out of the capital. I think I probably know where he would go. That night, the moonlight was bleak. In a deep, secluded alley, Song Jiang stumbled along unsteadily. He wore filthy, coarse cloth clothes, looking utterly disheveled. These days, he had been hiding at a blind old woman's house. He only told her some sweet words, and the old woman helped him evade the pursuing soldiers. Until the other day when she suddenly asked him if he was that young master from the Marquise's mansion being hunted throughout the city. He had no choice but to leave. He couldn't get caught, at least, not here. The night the Marquise's mansion was raided, he was drowning his sorrows over Wendong's matter at a tavern. After hearing the shocking news, he rushed back like a madman, only to witness the final scene of his entire family being taken away in prison carts. Song Jiang didn't have time to think and fled like a rat. Later he heard that Director Wen from the Ministry of Revenue was promoted to Vice Minister and received generous rewards for his merit in rooting out corruption. Only then did he understand that he had fallen into this man's trap from the beginning. His current wretched state was all thanks to the Wen family father and daughter. Song Jiang followed the dark alley and circled to the back wall of the Wen residence, lightly pushing off to leap over. He had been to this Wen residence several times, and was already familiar with its layout. At this moment, he had only one thought in mind: revenge. He would infiltrate the Wen family and make Wen Tao's family pay a painful price for this. He would make everyone who had harmed him suffer irredeemable consequences. As for Wendong, he would ruin her reputation completely. He would make sure she had no place to stand hereafter. How could the Prince of Chong'an want someone whose reputation was utterly destroyed? Who in the world would ever look up to her again? And what could cause her more pain than living the rest of her life in shadow? Song Jiang's eyes were bloodshot as he took a hidden path, hurrying toward the back courtyard. What was eerie was that the Wen residence was unusually quiet tonight. Not a single soul could be seen along the way, but at this moment his heart was filled only with overwhelming fury, with no time to ponder this abnormal, deathly silence. He rushed to the back courtyard and pushed the door open with his blade in hand. With a thud, a tremendous force suddenly struck. Song Jiang was immediately pressed down firmly to the ground by several hands. Several torches lit up simultaneously, the light so blinding that Song Jiang couldn't open his eyes. "I knew you would come here seeking revenge." Wendong's icy voice sounded from behind him. Song Jiang turned his head with difficulty. He was completely surrounded by armored soldiers. "Wendong, you venomous woman." Song Jiang's eyes were bloodshot as he roared hoarsely. "It was you, father and daughter, who set this vicious trap to harm me. It was you who drove me to such a desperate situation. It was all you." At this moment, Song Jiang no longer had any trace of his former noble young master's restraint. His entire face was twisted beyond recognition, his appearance utterly detestable. "Song Jiang, you brought this all upon yourself. If you hadn't harbored such evil intentions and committed such filthy and vile acts, who could have done anything to you?" As Wendong spoke, she tossed a piece of jade in front of him. It was the jade pendant he had carved with his own hands, a symbol of favor. Song Jiang stared fixedly at that jade pendant, his furious roar turning into a desperate howl. He could no longer shake the cold shackles or the fate he was about to face. He was unwilling to accept this. How could a heaven's favored son like himself fall into the hands of a lowly woman he regarded as a mere plaything? The officers escorted him, passing in front of her in a wretched state. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze falling coldly on his disheveled face. "Song Jiang, what lies before you? Neither conspiracy nor royal authority." He heard her sneer. But the law. This section's callbacks hit so hard. Remember when Song Jiang cornered her at the Wen estate? He looked down at Wendong condescendingly and said, What lies before you is neither morality nor the law, but royal authority. And now he is kneeling on the ground, wearing filthy clothes, being hauled away." Then Wendong bent down and threw his own words right back at him, changing only the last two characters. "But the law, royal authority can be manipulated, can be biased, can act on a whim, but the law won't." Song Jiang was ultimately caught not because of some brilliant scheme, but because Wendong understood him too well. She knew he would come to the Wen estate for revenge. She knew that this man, arrogant to his very bones, even with his family destroyed and ruined, his first reaction wouldn't be to flee for his life. "But I must destroy the person who made me lose face." At this moment he should finally understand, Wendong was never any plaything. She was merely waiting for the right moment to let you walk into the cage yourself. Extra chapter: the case of the Xuanyang Marquis estate didn't come to a close until March of the following year. This case implicated many, and the Xuanyang Marquis, along with his accomplices, were all severely punished according to law. All the women of the estate were reduced to slavery. Those with lesser crimes were exiled to the bitter cold borderlands, either as minors or as military slaves. Song Jiang was also among those sentenced to exile. Before departure, he begged to see the eldest daughter of the Wen family one more time. Wendong didn't agree, but Xiao Hong went to see him off instead. "Your Highness has concealed your abilities so deeply that no one noticed all these years." Song Jiang at that time was already withered like rotten wood, not a trace of his former arrogance and haughtiness remaining between his brows. Xiao Hong said indifferently, "Not even a fraction compared to your elder brother." His mind was excessively meticulous. Had he not departed for paradise early, this prince would also have found it difficult to discover his flaws. The implication being that Song Jiang, who fell into the trap so easily, was truly unworthy as an opponent. Song Jiang gave a miserable smile and took out a jade piece from his sleeve. This was the one he had previously given to Wendong, which she had discarded, and he had picked up again. During these days in prison, he used the rough stone walls to polish it day after day, finally smoothing its sharp edges into a round and gentle finish. "Things have come to this point. I have no face to see her either. I trouble your Highness to pass this jade to her. Consider it, leaving a keepsake." Xiao Hong took it, didn't even glance at it, and with a wave of his hand threw it into the cold lake water by the roadside. Song Jiang's pupils suddenly contracted, instinctively lunging to retrieve it, but was tripped by the shackles and fell face first into the dust. "Song Jiang, stop pretending, will you? Leaving a keepsake. You clearly just want to disgust her." Xiao Hong looked down disdainfully at the wretched person on the ground. "You really think you've salvaged your life? The road to exile is harsh and long. Your Xuanyang Marquis manor has offended so many people. Do you think you'll have it easy on the way?" Hearing this, the last trace of color drained from Song Jiang's face. Xiao Hong sneered. "Enjoy what is left of your time." It wasn't until the escort convoy disappeared through the city gate that the woman sitting in the distant tea pavilion finally set down her teacup. Just as she was about to call the waiter to settle the bill, Samone had already leisurely taken a seat across from her. "Waiter, 2 cups of tea and a plate of osmanthus cakes." "Coming right up." Xiao Hong looked at Wendong with a smile. "Your mouth says one thing, your heart another. Since you've come, why hide behind that cumbersome veiled hat? Are you afraid people won't recognize you?" Wendong let out a light snort. This subject only wanted to see with her own eyes the fate of her enemy, and feared he might be delusional, thinking I still have lingering feelings for him. What if this foolish obsession keeps him clinging to life? Xiao Hong couldn't help but laugh. If ever since Song Jiang was executed, Wendong had left the prince's manor, because Lady Luo failed to distinguish right from wrong and secretly colluded with Song Jiang, Wen Tao furiously ordered her to stay in their ancestral home and not return to the capital. From then on, Wendong's days at the Wen residence became exceptionally comfortable. At first, Xiao Hong was busy with the countless complications of the Marquis of Xuanyang case, and had no time for other matters. Until one day when lychees from Lingnan were delivered to the manor as tribute, he instinctively instructed, "Pick out some of the finest ones and send them to Miss Wen." Only after the words left his mouth did he realize with a start that she was no longer at the manor. Because of this incident, that brat Zhou Yang teased him for nearly half a month. Xiao Hong inadvertently glanced toward Wendong. The girl beneath the veil had shed her childishness and somehow blossomed into exceptional radiance. As if they hadn't seen each other in a long while, she chattered on about recent trivial troubles. But Xiao Hong's thoughts drifted back to that moonlit night by the pond, when Wendong said power is truly intoxicating. Xiao Hong suddenly felt an indescribable impulse. He absurdly wanted to embrace her, to shut out all the world's distractions, and then passionately stay by her side. As soon as this thought emerged, Xiao Hong just wanted to slap himself awake. Too absurd, too reckless. Clearly, his feelings toward her before were more of a brotherly or fatherly care and protection. Afterwards, he asked Wendong why she had said that. Clearly, she had already been struggling to resist under that power. Wendong explained that some people hold power yet exploit the people's wealth, bringing disaster to the country and its citizens. Such conduct is utterly detestable and deserving of punishment. But there are also those who bear the weight of the realm, yet can lighten taxes and labor, relieving the people's suffering, she said. Just as temporary submission can preserve an unyielding will, this subject also knows your highness feigns ignorance, so that one day the common people will no longer bear heavy burdens. It turned out she had been aware of everything all along. In the tea shed, Wendong continued speaking. Father seemed to have been frightened by the Songjiang incident and had recently been urgently searching for a live-in son-in-law candidate. Wendong naturally didn't want this and refused without mercy. Seeing her so resolute, Wentao pressed further. Could it be that Donga already has a man she fancies? At that moment, a face quickly flashed through Wendong's mind. But she also felt it strange. She did very much enjoy talking with Xiao Hong, mainly because he would listen earnestly, respond gently, and treat her with kindness, friendliness, and equality. But it also seemed different from liking, because sometimes when she thought of him, her heart would ache faintly. At this moment, seeing Xiao Hong gazing at her in a daze, Wendong spoke of this matter weighing on her heart. Your Highness is well informed and experienced. What do you think is the reason for this? She asked with a thirst for knowledge. The spring breeze swept past, and Xiao Hong was slightly stunned. The path he had chosen had no end, with unknown dangers ahead. How could he drag the person he loved into this again? Xiao Hong took a light sip of tea, bitterness on the tip of his tongue. Perhaps the old wound has not yet healed. Hey, to those who've read this far, I am Elena. I just finished reading this story and needed a long time to collect myself before daring to write this. First level, identify the Songjiang around you. I know this sounds very serious, but please hear me out. What is scary about Songjiang isn't what bad things he did, but rather, it is clearly his fault. Hyatt, he always makes you lower your head first. If you don't, he gives you the silent treatment if you do. He comes back, making you feel like everything has passed. In an unequal relationship, this pattern has a name. It is called psychological manipulation. So if there is someone around you who always makes you wonder, am I being too sensitive? Am I not good enough? If you find yourself becoming more and more cautious in a relationship, less and less like yourself, please stop and think, is this really love, friendship, family affection, or something else? It took Wendong 3 years to see this answer clearly, but you don't have to wait that long. So friends, whether you are currently experiencing a relationship that makes you suffocate or being cornered by some invisible marquise manner, in your life with no way out, remember Wendong's choice. It is not about waiting for someone to save you, but gritting your teeth and using your own wisdom and courage to dismantle the cage trapping you step by step. And, on that path, please also allow yourself to be loved, to be helped, to be treated gently. You deserve someone who looks at you as an equal, not someone who likes you from a condescending position. Finally, about Xiao Hong's line-old wounds not yet healed. All right, I am going to make myself a cup of tea and calm down. This story hits too hard. If you were also moved by it, remember to share it with the people you care about. Some words only have meaning when spoken out loud. See you in the next one.